Welcome back to Arise Prime Time, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day. I am Ngozi Alebu, and I have a guest commentator with me for the rest of the program who will be giving his thoughts on the news and issues of the day. He's the current affairs analyst and professor of communications at Baze University right here in Abuja. Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, good to see you.
Good evening.
How shocked were you when you heard
about
that some of our farmers, let me just use maybe using charms to grow their...
It was a pleasant surprise.
Pleasant?
I would have wanted him
how pleasant is that?
Yeah, I would have wanted him to explain some more how they do it, because it might just be some of our people are still very traditional. They're neither Muslims or Christians, so still believe they are still traditional in terms of religious orientation. So it is possible that they use charm to prey on for facility on the yams. That's the only sense I can understand it. Or that after the growth of the yam, after they have harvested it, they use charm to pray so that there can be sales.
Okay,
those are the times, contexts in which I can actually evaluate it, because I don't know how charm can be useful in terms of the fertilization of the plants.
I know in my part of the country, I mean, yam, for example, we would have this elaborate festival around the new yam. We used to have new yam festival.
In my place too, we do it around. But where is the element of charm coming in? That's the problem.
The one that I don't understand.
Of course, I'm not discounting whatever he has said, but of course, we probably will have did some more explanation. Maybe when you bring him next time, let him tell us how. Otherwise, it could just pass as an allegation that might trigger the response from some group of farmers.
As an agricultural expert, he would definitely know
it can actually be scary, for consumers of yam. When they get to know that...
I'm scared already. If you go to the market, you buy your yam today, the yam goes bad, the carrots go bad, and what have you. But he did explain he gave a scientific,
the other aspects were okay, but it was just the aspect of usage of charm, and that was problematic. And we needed more understanding, but there was no time. So.
Okay, so where do we start from with our conversation? There's this issue that's been on the front burner of the national discourse, the issue that seems to be a basket case now, the issue of corruption. Every day you wake up to headlines, and to breaking news, and another big, huge, humongous corruption allegation is out there. And we must underscore the point that it is, some of these remain allegations. The issue of the National Social Investment Program Agency, the CEO, Halima Shehu, who's been having to answer to questions at the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. What do you make of all the revelations you've been hearing so far?
There's a book I read recently, actually reviewed that book. It's written by Professor Adeniyi, and he was trying to explain the origin of corruption in this country and how it operates. And if you look at the conclusion, Professor Adeniyi concluded by saying that we often make a mistake thinking that corruption is neither systemic or endemic, and that corruption is essentially a systemic and endemic problem that cannot be solved through the singular, often repeated identification of individuals, thinking that by prosecuting them or by naming and shaming them or by trying them in the media that we can solve the problem of corruption. That corruption is so deep-seated that for you to find a Nigerian that is not potentially corrupt, or that is not looking for an opportunity to be corrupt, it's like trying to find a needle in a haystack.
That's quite almost uncharitable, and I will tell you why I say so, because I was actually going to ask you, in fact, that was going to be my first question. Are we, as Nigerians, are we as corrupt as is being perceived, or is just a few bad eggs that make the rest of us look really bad?
Okay, I was building a track to an argument. What I think is that the institutions are weak, and because institutions are weak, individuals, cash in on the weakness, to further their nest in the system that is not helpful, to their education, to the provision of health facilities, to the provision of infrastructures and utilities that will have otherwise been helpful to these individuals. So because the institutions are weak, the structures are weak, individuals try to assume the role of these institutions by trying to get as much resources as possible to cater for themselves, their family, and their friends, as the case could be. But it is not also to say, just like I was saying with reference to Professor Adebo's book, it is not also to say that all Nigerians are actually. It's not to say that the solution is in identifying individuals, because it's much more deep-seated than that. It's about strengthening the institution, preventing corruption, rather than thinking of as apprehension and prosecution alone. Because if you look at it from 1960 up to now, we have been dealing with the question of corruption. And as we are dealing with it, it's becoming worse. Those days it used to be a question of 10%, but now, if you look around very critically, it's even about 60-70%.
Why do you think
now,
so?
Yes, that is a question of institutional weaknesses, because human beings have this natural tendency to be aggrandizing, but you have to prevent them. That's why we have laws, At a time, the World Bank did a country assessment report and discovered that in every public expenditure in this country, 60% of the monies are wasted. The report was done in the build-up to the promulgation of if I'm right, build-up to the enactment of the Public Procurement Act 2007. 2007, the year I remember very clearly now. And of course, this situation has not changed. If you look around very critically, and from reports we're hearing, it's probably even worse than 60% of those monies being wasted, maybe 70 or 80%. So why is it worsening? Why are we not solving that? Because over the years, we also have continuous decay of these institutions that will have prevented individuals from being corrupt, which is why you see, much as we are campaigning against it, the EFCC is there, the ICPC is there, the police is there. It's looking as if, their efforts are insignificant, because the problem is much more widespread. And to lead us to the argument around the identification of individuals, sometimes, again, because of the widespread atmosphere of corruption, we tend to fall for that tactics, of identifying individuals and saying that they are one or two individuals. We'll malign them.
Scapegoats,
we'll malign them, we'll name and shame them, and oftentimes, they are never tried. Oftentimes, even when they are tried, they are exonerated. So we've got to be careful in the matrix as a case.
Let's examine the anti-corruption agencies, the EFCC, there's the ICPC. There's even the police. The police is an anti-corruption agency. I mean, when you really look at it.
And there's another code of conduct is also there.
Code of conduct is there.
Yeah, Bureau of Public Procurement is also anti-corruption.
So with all of these gatekeepers, with all of these checks in place, why are they not as effective as they should be? They bungle it from the beginning. Take the EFCC, for example.
I don't think so. I'm not sure they can do it alone. Which is why the problem is actually overwhelming. The agencies are overwhelmed because everywhere you look, it was even, I think I'm a Joda, that said it in the wake of President Buhari's ascension to power as president. President Buhari then set up a committee to look at, he was head of the transition committee or one of those committees, and he said everywhere you go, you see corruption, and of course the case is still like that. And why is this so? We see it all around us every day in the public and private sector. And sometimes you'll be wondering, what can we do? There's nothing else we can do other than strengthening the institutions, the mechanism to deal with.
How do you strengthen
them? We strengthen them through human beings. Human beings who are strong-willed, determined, to leave legacies, to ensure that rules and regulations are sustainable, to ensure that the opportunity to pilfer resources, are prevented. If the mechanisms are not preventive, we may just be begging the issue, because how many people do you want to prosecute in this country? If you allow EFCC to arrest all those who are corrupt, I'm not sure they have the detention room to take everybody that is corrupt at the same time, because if you look around, you see, whether small, medium, or large scale, or on a large scale, you see things that you can actually attribute to corruption. So that's where we are.
That's where we are. Let's talk about the need or the calls to plug leakages, that allow for this humongous corruption to happen. This case of Sadiya Umar Farouk, for example, who's been invited by EFCC to come and answer to questions around her tenure as the Minister for Humanitarian Affairs, Disaster Management, and what have you. What do you make of what you're hearing so far? And she's pleaded with the EFCC to give her more time. As a matter of fact, she put out a statement saying, look, this should not be about media prosecution and media trial and what have you, or trial by the public. What are you making out of all of this?
Well, when you invited me for this show, I actually took my time to read around the subjects, and of course, from everything I've seen, I've not seen anywhere where she's, although we're not being preemptive, but I've not seen anywhere where you can say that she has been directly accused. A plausible explanation was given that those affected, those that have been accused or that have attracted the interest of the anti-crime agency, are those heading agencies under her. And that's one. And there are two, that those monies, allegedly misappropriated.
In this case, 37 billion. That's the figure that's been.
That's fine. There are monies below threshold that she will need to approve. Right. In compliance with the Public Procurement Act 2007. So there was no need for those agencies to approach her for approval. So, I mean, why in the first instance were they inviting her for explanation? That's my understanding, really. But of course, we know that the processes are still on. At some point, we'll probably have some more details. But in the circumstance, nothing is directly connected to her. And she came out very confidently that she doesn't know the gentleman that was mentioned as having been awarded several contracts and that was responsible for distributing funds. Maybe we should be careful not to mention names.
Absolutely.
I just saw somebody being mentioned, and she came out very confidently that she has never met her. She doesn't work for her. At that level of confidence, that level of absolute confidence looks very convincing, because it's a very dangerous path to tread if you are not sure of yourself.
Yes,
because the gentleman can also come out and say that, I know you, I gave you. She took that risk. So it comes persuasive, really. Yeah. But maybe we'll just give some time to see what the truth actually is.
Absolutely. But it does not mean that she should not respond.
Oh, no. Every citizen, if she is because you are not responding,
her side of the story. But when you hear figures like this, 37 billion, I mean, funds running into billions and trillions of naira.
Yeah. But two things, Ngozi. I remember, I think I said this somewhere else today, former EFCC chairman Farida Waziri, when she was in charge, she visited Atahiru Jega as INEC chairman then, and she told Atahiru Jega that I've just heard that the government has released 12 billion to you. You've got to be careful. When people come around you now, they look at your eyes, they are thinking that 12 billion is your bank account. They think you own that money. When we hear billions, we get scared. We just assume that, because of the trust deficit between the leaders and the led, and because of long years of the disappointment, of the citizens, there's a huge deficit, in trust, So sometimes when we hear these monies, there might not be anything to it, except we dig deeper, which is why we should abhor salacious and sensational reports until, the criminal justice process has gone through its course. Absolutely. And again, leading us to the question of media trial, which is something that nobody should actually...
Absolutely, and we're not about to do that
condone,
here at Arise. It's still talking about corruption. You made a point earlier as to the reward system without necessarily using the same words. The issue of pension payment, minimum wage. The Trade Union Congress, for example, has been making some demands on government, and one of those demands is, look, there's a need for a new national minimum wage, which must be negotiated and implemented. And if delayed, arrears must be paid. TUC came up with this 10-point agenda, and all of this really points to the need to ensure that the Nigerian worker, indeed Nigerians, are well taken care of, whether in terms of their remuneration or having put in 35 years in their career, they should have something tangible to look forward to, so that they don't look back with regrets and, giving their youth to working, for the nation and all of that. Look at it from that angle. Can that in itself address the issue of corruption in a way that people don't have fear about their future? And so they think there's a need to, dip
You're
their
trying
hands
to help
in
yourself,
Yeah.
to build an institutions around yourself, because the state institutions of the states are failing, or do you think they are failed, so you're trying to help yourself quickly. And of course, it leads us again to what we've been talking about, let's even talk about the permanent secretary, for instance. I don't know what their salary is, but oftentimes they tell us that it's around about 500,000 minus plus, what can that do for a permanent secretary in the Nigeria of today? Or maybe minimum wage 30,000 naira, and a bag of rice is 60,000 naira.
There you go.
Or a driver that earns 60,000 naira and a bag of rice is 60,000 naira. I listened to Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Olisa Agbakoba, saying that because of the problem we have in this country now, he now has to provide food for his staff, breakfast and lunch, because his driver, for instance, if he pays the driver 100,000 naira, a bag of rice is 60,000 naira. What's he going to do with 40,000 naira? So there's problem, we're living some kind of lie, with our wage system, it's not reflective of the realities, that is upon us, and that's why people are tempted, to put their hands in the cookie jar, except especially when the opportunity comes. And that's why I mentioned that, I referred to this earlier on. It was my Lord Bishop Kuka that said, he delivered a lecture somewhere, and he said, look, that he once encountered sections of people who are regretting that they've not been appointed, none of their people have been appointed into power, so that they too will have the opportunity to be corrupt, because corruption is the sing song. And
then, of course, you hear the juicy appointments.
So
only just reflecting this,
it's actually a very sickening thing that we do not want it to be normalized, and that's why we also have to highlight the question of value. We have to reinvent value. We have them aplenty. We have them around us, but we have to highlight it and play them up so that we can be reminded of the virtues embedded in them as well.
Absolutely. Let's stay with this TUC 10-point demand very quickly before we wrap. They've made a number of demands. One of them, the issue of the national minimum wage. They're also asking this government to address the issue of inflation that stands at about 28% right now. They're saying this government is to bring it down to the regional average of around 9.4%.
Yeah, I like what the TUC is doing. We need these organizations to help us put the feet of the government to the fire so that they can be up and about, and of course that is the responsibility of organizations like that, But the other thing that we have to remind ourselves is that we also have our own individual roles to play. If government is calling us to make sacrifices, we have had them severally. We have also cautioned them that if you want us to make sacrifices, we also need you to be sacrificial in everything you do. And it's not just by mouthing it, but we want to see it reflected in your actions and in your inactions. If you are saying we should make sacrifices and we're not seeing it reflected in you, of course, we just know that you're trying to deceive us. You are being hypocritical. Yes, we've told that government that severally. I know they understand it that way. But we also have our responsibilities as well. And what is our responsibility? If you take me back to what Professor Jerry Kana told us many years ago, that whatever you are doing, do it well. Do it well.
If you're president,
be president. Well. If you're a teacher, teach well.
Right.
If you're a broadcaster, broadcast well. So every little contribution from every little corner, would add up to the whole, and then we can propel ourselves to the next level. Yeah.
Well, somebody just reminded us there that Africa and China actually did a song.
Okay.
Mr. President, if you remember that.
Okay.
Some other demands of the TUC. They're saying, look, this 28 trillion naira budget cannot actually stimulate the economic growth. And, they're saying, look, there's a need to critically look at, some of the parameters in the budget. That as a matter of fact, this budget will only serve, the political class. Is it a fair assessment by TUC?
Budget, you know what budget is? It will attract different levels of comment. I've seen people who commended it, who said, well, we are done with shocks, some shocks that we witnessed in the past as a result of the increased liberalization of the economy through the floating of the naira, through, what's it again? The removal of subsidy, allowing market forces to be at play. Muda Lawal, former president of Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, I heard him very clearly yesterday, was very eloquent on some of these explanations. There's another economist, Badamosi, who sounded, Mr. or Doctor, I can't remember now, I apologize, who also sounded, who was not too optimistic about the budget. Oftentimes, this is what we expect budget to look like, because they are often it's just projection, and like economists will tell you, all things being equal, this is what we want to happen. We've made some assumptions. Will those assumptions hold? What about the headwinds that are likely to happen? Assumptions around expected income. But again, I'm seeing one silver lining, and I just hope that it comes into fruition. I said it the other day. The fact that refineries are coming on steam, mechanical completion, Port Harcourt. Let's hope that mechanical completion will progress into maybe arithmetic full completion or however. Dangote refinery is coming. Okay, by the time these refineries come up, perhaps we'll have increased supply of PMS, and of course it will affect the price. And maybe there's a way in which the price of PMS it often has domino effects on the price of goods and services.
It's one of their demands too, that the pump price should come down drastically. Professor Abiodun Adeniyi, I have to say thank you very much here.
My pleasure, thank you.
As always. Well, that's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. From me, Ngozi Alebu, and the entire team here in Abuja. Goodbye, and thanks for watching.